This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. John, good to have you with us.
Always a pleasure, Roby.
All right, we get some late Friday developments on this Board of Corrections, parole board, Jamal Jones situation that had brewed a little bit at the end of last week in terms of some scandalous details had been discovered about his past. He resigns late Friday. And we also had the AG warning Eddie Joe Williams, kind of this pseudo replacement for the Board of Corrections interim secretary. What do you make of all of the turmoil, I think is the proper word?
Well, I'm weary of it, and it gets worse. And to me, we're long since past the point at which reasonable people say, let's talk this thing out. We're not getting anywhere. This is unseemly in service to the voters and in service to the needs of the state. And let's deal with this as adult persons. That seems not to be happening. Let's see. I guess the freshest information is that the governor's staff didn't vet this guy. They put in as head of the post-prison transfer board. I mean, the fine reporter for KATV didn't have much trouble, I think, filing an FOI and finding out about difficulties in his rather recent past. So you got to fault the governor for that. And then I'm just going to tell you the truth. I've been on the side of the prison board all along, and I basically still am. But I was taken aback when they decided that while the prisons are running okay on an interim basis because they have an actual prison director below the Secretary of Prisons, I was surprised that the prison board said, we're going to put in our own, and it's going to be a former state legislator, Eddie Joe Williams of Cabot. I thought, that's a little in your face, and it's maybe legally dubious. Maybe the governor does that in concert with the board. I know those two statutes are stayed right now in terms of giving the governor power that is vested in the correction board in the Constitution. But did you really have to make this appointment right now? And did you really need to pick a politician? And what was that all about? So I'm really, it's all this, I guess, will be litigated over time and I guess, but really people, well-intended people with basic competence could sit down and work this thing out so we could not be talking about this every week because it's dysfunction. It's utter congressional basis dysfunction.
I'll throw some potential scenarios out there for you. One, perhaps Jamal Jones was properly vetted by the Arkansas governor's office, and with knowledge of this, they still went forward with that appointment. And I would say, too, perhaps Eddie Joe Williams was inserted in that slot as a potential bridge. He's obviously got a lot of connections to Trump world and Governor Sanders world, and certainly her father, and perhaps he was maybe brought on by the board to say, let's try to bridge the gap here, which the governor said, I don't want to bridge the gap. So I think there's a lot of things that we don't know on that.
Yeah, I know there are, but I had the same thought as explanation for the Williams hire. Interim, stressed that it was interim. They need to get a lawyer's bill paid. They need to try to start bridging gaps. And Eddie Joe's an affable guy, well-connected in Republican dealings. I'm still not sure they can do it. And I've been on there. Right. And Tim Griffin, which it really doesn't mean anything because he's lost every case so far on that, on this prison dispute, at least at the Pulaski Chancery level. But he said, yeah, you can't do it. You're violating the law. And I'm not sure. I'm not as sure they can as I am about the prison board's solid position otherwise. And it doesn't look like the bridge is well. I'm going to hope that it can be. I'm going to hope that calmer, but the governor's MO is conflict and contrivance and hostility. Just seems to be the way she operates, and it plays better on Fox, where she makes near daily appearances.
Well, to
I
your
mean,
point of
hyperbole.
to
Yeah,
your
go ahead.
point of adults getting in the room and resolving that prison problem, I have advocated for that for weeks of let's find a way to all talk and I think they all want more prison beds, John. So I don't see why
Yeah,
they're
nobody's
not
disagreeing.
cooperating on this. So, but we also see this type of level of dysfunction at the federal level in Congress. Now you
Yeah,
have a bipartisan immigration and foreign aid agreement between Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats, and the White House, but the House isn't going along for. They say the president has the power to do some of this stuff already, but in the same vein, they say we have a stronger bill that's better. I get nothing but mixed messages on this, and I feel like I just feel like we're playing stupid politics at this point.
we're just being stupid. Uh, the nation is stupid right now in terms of its Washington governance, and that's just uh, that's just where we are. And it's similar to this, but to the correction thing, except worse, of course. And again, we got to compromise. We're percolating. Senate bipartisan agreement that gives the president explicit authority to close the border under certain circumstances, which now exist. And he is on record saying the minute I get this law, they're closed. And think about it. The Republican argument is we believe you have that power already. Therefore, we're not going to give you that power expressly. What?
Right.
I mean, if you really wanted to solve the problem, rather than kowtow to Donald Trump and the extreme right and milk this for political points, because I think in Arkansas you got about 70+% of the people, I bet if we polled it, believe the border is out of control and it is singularly Joe Biden's fault. So, and I think I think in a lot of red states that's the case, and we got a presidential election year, and we've got a inevitable Republican nominee who is disruptive and egocentric to the extreme to deal with. That's the complication. Meantime, everybody's saying we got a problem here, and even some liberals will have to admit thousands a day coming across on average over an extended period of time. It's past the point of principle that we're a welcoming country of immigrants. This is kind of a problem right now. So let's pass this pretty good bill, and make certain things expressly so. But it's not going to happen, obviously, or it doesn't appear that it's going to happen.
I'm just to summarize, I don't see a lot of problem solvers in the mix at this point. So that's my final takeaway on that. Let's turn our attention to a piece that is going to appear later this week on talkbusiness.net. And it does look for some problem solvers in terms of people finding a way to put some things on the ballot to reverse course on what they believe is wrong public policy. Tell me a little bit, I don't want to spoil the piece because I want everybody to read it, but give me a sneak preview of what you've written for us.
Well, for the context, I'd add, I think you do something, correct me if I'm wrong, sort of a magazine compilation of articles around the first of the year that you kind of call State of the State. Is that sort of what that is?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I by special permission of my newspaper, I've long written one for you, an article for you in that context every year. And you had the idea this year to explore this, as your idea is a great one, and I jumped at it, to explore this idea that while the Democratic Party is so outnumbered, it can't do much, if anything, and while the Republicans are so overwhelmingly in control, we had through this century a percolating citizens initiative movement, but it seems, even as politicians try to restrict it, to becoming ever more powerful, to be getting more momentum. And you wanted to look at whether that's an emerging check and balance on potential overreach by the Republican supermajority. And I ended up, focusing on the FOI enshrinement of that in the Constitution, and sort of focusing on, and really diverse, ridiculously diverse, one of the members said, a drafting committee for that stretched from libertarian extreme conservative to independent conservative to the Arkansas Press Association, to a veteran bill drafter who's left of center, to a Democratic state senator, to David Couch, who I call a little more liberal disruptor from the left, and also the expert in how to get these things on the ballot. And I look at how they're operating. And I guess we could stop it there, except to say they all became buddies and they took unanimous votes because they found something all those competing philosophies could agree on, which is let's stand up for the people when we believe there's overreach by the legislature or by one party control. That's what I'm looking at. And I think it's interesting. There's a little Pollyanna aspect to it. They're going to have issues like this that galvanize for this thing to be an actual movement. The FOI does. So I encourage people to take a look at that whenever it runs. You might know when.
Common ground problem solvers is what you're basically talking about.
I found some.
I guess where my political philosophy is in terms of I like government that solves problems in a way that brings strong majorities of bipartisan consent on board. I'm not for one side wins and one side loses all the time, and
we have elections for winning and losing. We have problems to be solved after the elections are over. At least that's the way it ideally would work. I'm with you on that. I'd rather government work and not contrive problems than be solved by a set of principles that I totally agree with or share. We're not all going to get everything that our personal philosophy or personal set of political principles seeks, or we shouldn't. Anyway, read that, the FOI drafting committee, and we get into the abortion amendment and the Learns amendment and this whole principle of the people going out with petitions to be the check and balance on overwhelming Republican control. That's
too.
Yeah, and paper ballots. We got that. Yeah. Okay.
All right. He's John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Always good to get your take. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.